Well, hello and welcome to the second episode of Formula Un by Americans podcast. I am your host, Patrick Finley, along with my co host again this week, Mr. Stephen Harris. Stephen, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? I'm excited for episode number 2.
Yeah, man. We've had 3 weeks of racing since our last podcast, and one of those weeks did not contain racing. 1 week contained a parade,
hmm
and then this past week in Monza, I think we had quite a race. So we do have
Yeah,
a good bit to talk about, and some driver changes also. So yeah,
yeah,
I'm excited.
yeah, me too.
Well, let's just go ahead and dive into what we've got. So 3 weeks ago, after our first premiere podcast, we had Spa, and Spa was both on. I think it was both on our list of
hmm
tracks that we
Yes,
enjoy watching races at. So that was one
yeah, it
that we
was.
were really excited about watching the race.
Yeah,
And then you add the element of weather in there,
hmm
and unfortunately, the rain just didn't let up to allow
yeah,
for a safe race because we saw what happened with Lando in qualifying,
yes, yeah,
which probably was in the minds of Michael Massey and the guys.
for sure, definitely. Yeah, especially that part of the track too. Having Hubert, from a couple years back. I mean, there's just I think it's a sensitive race that they want to, they're going to be err on the side of caution over, taking a chance. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you trade out the circumstances for a lot of other races, especially with the tracks that are flatter, that don't have the undulation
true,
to them, I think that's a different scenario. I think you do actually have the race that goes on,
true.
but in Spa with just the elevation change, um, was that added feature that prevented them from having that race. Um, but it was the qualifying. We saw George had a
Oh,
had a
man.
had a massive qualifying effort. What did you think about what did you think about qualifying? Because that's really what we have to talk about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was definitely, I mean, seeing him compete in that type of condition is always very interesting. And just how on the edge, these cars really are at that time with that much water on the track and everything. And it was probably the qualifying set of the year at this point at least. And man, when George came across, I was like, oh my goodness, like he's doing pretty well. And then I believe it was Lewis who came over after him, and Lewis had a slower time, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Like, so definitely very exciting to watch and really cool to see George put on that type of a performance. I mean, he already is nicknamed Mr. Saturday, but just owning that name and definitely deserving that position to do it in that type of condition, everything. It was really cool to watch for sure. And also, I keep even thinking about Lando. I mean, he was, I believe, in the first 2 sessions, he was, I believe, first place in both of them, if I think it right. So,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think he led
yeah, yeah.
both sessions. So
So,
Lando was.
had he not, put it in the wall there, like, man, he may have even been looking at a pole position for McLaren, which would have just been incredible. It's kind of the unknown of that, So it was quite the event really for qualifying. It was a fun watch. I thought. What were your thoughts, Pat?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was a phenomenal qualifying, and especially just that final session.
Right.
You know, obviously, I mean, I'll be up front. I'm a Lando homer, so it would have been great to see him
hmm
take part in that final qualifying session.
hmm
You know, in the conditions that everybody else was in. But I thought, and rain is always considered the equalizer of talent, and
Hmm.
so to see Max, I mean, Max is up there, Lewis is up there, but now to be able to say, all right, George, you are up there as well
Yeah.
in a Williams at Spa, that's a high speed track,
Hmm.
nonetheless. Um,
Hmm.
I just think it highlights his talent, and 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 I think it's a lot of promise of what's to come next year, and we'll talk about that here in a minute.
Hmm.
But um, unfortunately, we know the race was heavy rains, and they were not able to put the race on. Did you have any thoughts, Stephen, about anything they could have done, or just and I know we're looking back at it 2 weeks later, going, man, surely they could have done this, and and I know that they've
Hmm.
probably done the same things, retrospectives, thinking about like what could we have done differently.
Right. Yeah. I mean, looking back at it, I mean, I think it was the right decision to not race in those conditions. I mean, even when Max, who's on pole, is having trouble seeing past the safety car, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how bad it really was. So, I think that's the right decision to make. As a fan, obviously, I want racing. It's like, but it's like short of them coming back on Monday, I don't really know what they could have done, honestly. And, being a less experienced fan of, more like 3 years, I know you've watched it over your, whole life, really. I mean, have there ever been examples of, these type of conditions that they've decided to kind of do it differently, or since you have more of a historical um, view of it, I'd definitely love to hear what you think on it.
No, I will actually say that I don't remember a situation where they were really considering not having a race because of rain.
Hmm.
Outside of the Lauda Hunt
Mm.
at Suzuka back in the 70s, where Lauda actually pulled off and said he wasn't going to race because
Mm.
conditions were so bad. But
Mm.
that's really dating back past the safety era of that we're in now,
Very true.
where there's so much more focus on safety. So I don't remember anything like that. The only thing I could have thought about was I know NASCAR has done this in the past, where if rain is um, possible, they kind of bump up the start time to try to get
Hmm.
the race in.
Hmm.
But I don't know if that was a possibility for F1. I mean, TV rights are that's
Hmm.
such a huge role in what they do.
For sure.
Um, but I don't know if awarding points, you know, it was the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I find debatable on it. Looking back, it's like part of me is like, well, hey, good for George Russell to be rewarded for that incredible performance,
Yeah.
but yet at the very same time, it's kind of like, it wasn't really, worth that many points, I guess, in a sense. Maybe looking back at it, even with it being half points. But yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. It's just kind of, I don't know. It feels like they were kind of rocking a hard place and just trying to make the best of it, type of thing. But at the same time, it's not really. Um, it doesn't feel like the traditional way of like awarding points. You typically have a race and have some type of exchange of places and stuff like that. Where this was literally just 4 laps behind the safety car to just call it a race. That kind of feels cheated, I guess, as a fan. I guess in a sense, to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah. No, I agree. I remember back when Jenson Button won the World Championship 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had a race in Malaysia that was called early due to rain, um, and and half points were awarded in that
Mm-hmm.
race. I don't remember how many laps. actually were finished in that race, but it was I think it wasn't a full race. I do know that, but they did
Mhm.
race quite. I mean, majority of the race.
Right.
Um, so I yeah I struggle with the half points system, especially in this scenario where they did a couple laps behind a safety car, and it's like, all right, we've put on a race,
Yeah.
but no one actually ever had an opportunity to pass one another.
Right. Yeah.
So
100% agree.
yeah, I hope that I hope that they are able to look at this going forward and make some changes.
Hmm.
Um, so, uh, but to go back to the 2009 Malaysian Grand Prix, they completed 31 laps.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and the schedule was 56. So
Hmm.
yeah, so they actually raced.
Yeah. Yeah. They got half of it in. So
Yeah, but yeah, so Spa very disappointing. I think from both you and I's perspective, and I think the fans' perspective.
yeah.
I think with them awarding points, I don't think there's any chance they ever come back this year to it,
Mhm.
which is sad because that is such a great and phenomenal racetrack.
It really is. Yeah.
But speaking of George, in regards
Mm.
to his second place um, finish in qualifying, um, I'm just glad he didn't finish first, and that would have been his first maiden win.
Yeah.
I thought
Right.
about that too. Yeah.
That's a great
Hey,
point.
I won, but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
I won qualifying.
Yeah.
But Toto had a big decision, which apparently was made at some point over the last couple of weeks between George and Valeri. I had my thoughts on who should get that seat, and I know you did as well. So why don't you dive into your thoughts behind who should get that seat and what happens next year?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely giving George a seat just kind of seemed inevitable in this sense. Had this been last year at this time, where Mercedes and Lewis are both running away with the championships, I think it might have been it might have been it would have been a significantly more difficult situation for Toto. But given how this season's unfolded, and with Red Bull being right there, if not maybe even being able to take both championships away from Mercedes, it felt like they had to kind of make a move and kind of say, all right, we got to, you know, put our best foot forward with this, which I don't think having Valtteri in the car was that. He up until last week, he's really had a pretty difficult season, where just getting involved in incidents and finding himself at the back of the pack and not being able to move through, like at Azerbaijan. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there was another race that he just kind of got stuck at the back and wasn't able to make moves. So I think for the
Imola, where he
that's
had the
right.
incident with George.
Yes, yeah, that was it. Yeah, George was actually passing him in
Yeah.
the slower car at that point in time, and they got into it. Um, so, um, yeah, so I felt like, for Mercedes to say they're here to win championships, I think they had to make this move, to get George up there, just because of what George has shown this year, as well as the two previous years. Even, he's shown himself to be a capable driver who just kind of needs better equipment. And as Williams has progressed, so has he, and he's really led that, I think, to a certain degree. So, yeah, to me, it would kind of was a kind of had to take that, or had to make that move. I do think there was an element of Hamilton wanting to have Valtteri as his number two. They kind of had that kind of set in stone, where Valtteri wasn't necessarily going to compete with Hamilton and was going to kind of play the wingman and kind of fill that role. So I think there was kind of an element of, not wanting to tick off your number one guy to a certain degree, and possibly bring somebody in who might possibly be able to compete with Hamilton on a level playing field, which could make for a very interesting next season, to see how George fits in and how that all plays out. He's definitely a young gun, ready and hungry for to a chance and a chance at a better ride, and it certainly seems like Mercedes will be that next year over Williams. So that's kind of my take on it. What's been your take on it, Pat?
I really do feel like George deserves this seat, no doubt about it. I think that the thing that really forced Toto's hand was George's contract situation. His contract with Williams was up at the end of this year, and that opened up the possibilities of other teams commenting or potentially poaching George. I mean, going back, a month or two ago, you heard that Red Bull said they would be open if George was available. And so I think you look at that, and Toto has to then weigh his options. Do we want to keep Valtteri, who has been our number two guy, and he knows his role within the organization, and he's not going to upset the apple cart? We'll give him a couple wins a year when he, when he really, strives.
Right.
And look, I say that because I think I texted you guys and was like, he's got 9 wins over the course of 4 seasons, and over that same course of time, Nico had 20 something wins against Lewis.
Yeah.
And so I think there was that dynamic that Lewis is that number one guy. And it was easy just to kind of go through that and push forward with that same kind of dynamic. But throwing how George has really improved this, or how George has improved year after year at Williams, and the car has improved there as well. His contract situation that he's out, and he can go anywhere. And so Mercedes is like, well, do we want to tell him he can go back to Williams, or is Red Bull going to come in and poach him? And I think Christian knew when George was signed, because he then announced that Sergio was back. So I think you just have all that kind of going, and they announced that Pierre was back, and that Tsunoda was back. So you look at all that after during this summer break, and everything kind of started falling into line about who was coming back where and when. And so I think it's been known in the paddock a while that George was getting that seat, and even Christian walked by and asked Jensen, it was like, are you congratulating him on his win or on his contract?
Yeah.
And Jensen laughs, and George is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just look at that and go, yeah, this has been known for a while, from all sides. But yeah, I'm excited to see George in that seat. I'm excited to see somebody maybe take the gusto to Lewis and take the fight to him, and really have like Max and Lewis and George, and hopefully Lando and Daniel, like all, and Charles,
Right.
and Carlos. I mean, how awesome would that be to have those 4 teams fighting again?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be incredible to see.
Yeah. So
it seems like, Ferrari's heading in the right direction. Obviously McLaren is too, and Red Bull's definitely made gains on Mercedes. So who knows with the new car, what that might bring next year, but man, it could be it could be some very exciting racing that we see next year. I think, just given the trajectory of where these teams are heading. So
Yeah.
definitely excited for it.
So mark it down in this podcast, 9/15/2021, that I said next year all four of these teams are going to be fighting it out.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So let's hope for that.
Yeah.
So talking about fighting it out, what did you think about the head-to-head this past Sunday between Max and Lewis at turn one and also turn four on lap one? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think initially it was like I felt like it was a very like there was a lot of drama with it initially, and like kind of as the couple days have kind of gone on, it's kind of become less and less of an event to me, at least. Where in the whole scheme of things, championship wise, really it's 0 points, 0 points. So it's not like Lewis made out like he did in Britain, or
Right.
the other way around. So it's not like this championship was flipped on its head, or whatever the case may be. um, but I think it's a very interesting incident. I think that there was a lot of things that contributed to it. Both, Max had an 11-second pit stop, and then Lewis
Yeah.
had a 4-second pit stop. So I think both of them were kind of at a spot where they're not looking to give an inch to anybody. They're trying to make up time from
Yeah.
their team letting them down, and so both of them are very driven individuals as far as when they put their mind to something, they push through anything and everything type of thing. So I think there was that kind of like that clash coming together where just two guys are trying to make up for lost time. And then I also do think it's interesting that I've seen a couple different replays, as well as some came across today, where they kind of recreated the accident. And just it's very interesting to me at how the media as well as Red Bull really haven't mentioned that Hamilton really doesn't hit the apex of turn one at all, and kind of contributes to the accident as far as pushing um, Max off the track. And I just kind of find that interesting. I would have thought that Red Bull would have picked up on that pretty quickly, of just saying, hey, you missed the apex of turn one, and not, Max on the outside of that. So, um, at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like, like I said, it doesn't change the championship. So it kind of seems like it's, just two guys got into a clash.
Yeah.
Maybe when it's all said and done, Max probably should have just, given the spot and, lived to fight
Taking the
another
fight.
day type of
Yeah.
thing. But I know that both of them were not going to give an inch, given, what just happened, within the previous, couple laps, just with those pit stops and everything. So I do find that interesting. I also think that the FIA's ruling of kind of giving Max a 3-place grid penalty is going to be interesting to see how that plays out long term, I think, because given next year we're supposed to have a lot closer racing with the new setup of the cars and everything. And I feel like incidents like that are going to be
More
more
prevalent.
prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, is the FIA kind of saying, if you find yourself in this situation, instead of racing, I want you to take go off the track, give up the spot, and then live to fight another day? Or are they going to kind of let them bang wheels a little bit and kind of, IndyCar is a significantly less of a, racing series than Formula One, but, they do allow them to kind of bump and, have, kind of try to, have overtakes and stuff like that, to where they kind of, things do happen in a sense, and they kind of allow that to happen, where I feel like the FIA kind of coming in and giving this type of a penalty could set a bad precedence going forward, where it's like, we don't want wheel to wheel racing. You just need to give up the corner and, give up the spot and, try to get them the next lap, type of thing. So, I don't know, that's kind of my takeaway of the whole thing. It's a little bit more big picture instead of just specifically focusing in on that one event. But yeah, that's kind of my takeaway. What was yours, Pat?
Yeah. I mean, looking at if Max bails out, he has to go over those sausage curbs,
Right.
and it's not guaranteed that your car is going to come out unscathed from that.
Very true.
And so you think about it from that perspective, like Lewis ran Max off coming into turn one,
Mm-hmm.
and Max was alongside of Lewis going into turn one, and
Mm-hmm.
I think you give him the space and race,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because and also I think we've got to call it like having the sausage curbs in there, like that was what actually caused the wreck because it
Man.
upset Max's car so bad that it kind of hopped and then
Yeah.
his back wheel jumped in front of Lewis's back wheel and then that caused the climbing of the car and then
Yeah.
thank goodness for the halo,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
that Lewis only received like a little bump on the head,
Mm-hmm.
um, but and I've seen it over the past couple of days. One, Jackie Stewart came out and said, I love Jackie, but he came out and said that that Max is not maturing in the rate that they thought, which I think that's a little absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that statement's a little bit. I mean, Lewis is one that he can race you hard, but if you race him hard, he cries like a newborn. But and then Damon Hill came out today saying that he thought Max should have given the position up. So we must say these two are both Englishmen.
Mm-hmm.
You
True.
know, well,
True.
I think Jackie's actually Scottish, um, but so they're both from the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I look that's just hard racing in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I would not fault Max. I would
Mm-hmm.
not fault Lewis. That's just a racing incident, and I hate that Max is penalized going to the next race with 3 grid place penalty.
Yeah.
I think our good friend of the show Lee would disagree with that, but whatever. He doesn't contribute enough to have a voice.
Yeah, no, that's a great point about the sausage curb really causing that ultimately, because even if that's not there, maybe Max does give up the position where it's, hey, I'm pushed off the track, but and he has to make a second, split second decision. Like, do I give up this spot or do I try to, squeeze into turn two? And, I mean, he felt like squeezing into turn two was his best option, but maybe if that sausage curb wasn't there, he's like, I'm just going to give up the spot. I'm not going to damage my car by doing this. I may have to get position, but, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think that's a great point. So,
Yeah, but that just added to a race that to me I thought overall Monza was a great race, and did not take
mhm,
away, in my opinion, did not take away from the win from McLaren and Ricardo. Um, I thought after Daniel got off the line, I
mhm,
thought, and after he held it kind of through the first pit stop, I was like,
yeah,
they're going to do this thing
right.
because they were holding them off, and even when Max was going to, even if Max had come out with a 2 second stop,
Hmm.
the AWS analytics was saying that Daniel was still going to come out like 2 seconds ahead of Max.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that was surprising to everybody watching the race that Max was not able to catch Daniel,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, and Lewis was not able to catch Lando. I mean, so
Hmm.
I think you had a lot of McLaren has a lot of momentum, not only coming in from the sprint race, which was boring,
Yeah.
but they had a lot of momentum actually in the race that was pointing to their favor, even if Max and Hamilton did not have their issues that they had that ultimately caused their collision.
Hmm.
I still think McLaren is probably a race winner for the first time since 2012. And Lando was on the podium. I don't think Lando
Hmm.
probably would have been second,
Hmm.
but I think he would have been on the podium. What what are your thoughts on that, Steven?
Yeah. I think given the pace that McLaren was showing, the race pace that they were showing was just, I mean, really was pretty impressive. Just not only just in the race, but also in the sprint as well, where they, Lando was basically holding off Lewis for the whole time. First half of the race and pretty much the whole entire sprint race. And Ricardo making up those positions to get up into second. Well, I guess third in the sprint, but to start second. So I think that they showed that their race pace was the best, and um, yeah, it would have been interesting to have Lewis and Max finish the race, of course, but I don't really necessarily think it changed the outcome significantly for sure. Like, it's not like they would have been 1 and 2 and McLaren would have been 3 and 4 or anything like that. I don't think that would have happened at all. So, um, but yeah, to see McLaren, win that race, and man, Monza is just one of my favorite tracks, and it just seems like every race there is just so fun to watch. Even though I felt like this year was a little bit more of a parade than it usually is, like the quality of overtakes that we got to see, and some of the wheel to wheel racing was just incredible to watch. And you got Lando going in the grass to get past Leclerc, and just different overtakes like that were just so fun to watch and just made
Yeah,
for a really entertaining race.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I totally forgot about that Lando move. That was a spec. I mean, that was a spectacular move. That was the racing that you want to see,
Mhm.
and that was clean racing.
Yeah, yeah.
That was very very good, and that was a mega move from him.
hmm Yeah, yeah, man. So definitely race of the year as far as I'm concerned. It's always fun watching Monza, but thought that was a special one, especially seeing McLaren come back and
Yeah,
Ricardo especially too. I mean,
yeah,
to finally get that first win since leaving Red Bull, and it's he's just one of those guys that I feel like he's hard to root against. You just kind of he's
he is.
I feel like everybody likes him. So
Yeah, great. I mean, him and Lando both. I mean, they're both
that's
great
true.
personalities,
Yeah.
and they are very fan friendly.
hmm
Those are just guys that you want to see succeed in the sport.
hmm
Unlike Mazepin,
Yeah.
who is 21st in points now.
Yeah. Of the 20 cars. So that's interesting.
Um, but yeah, it's great to see Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, 21st, and there's 20 cars on the grid. But yeah, it's great to see Daniel return to form,
Mhm.
and I really hope it's this something that clicked this weekend that he can continue to carry out, because I don't think that only helps him. I think it helps McLaren in general as they continue to move forward. It helps Lando as he continues to mature as a driver,
Mhm.
which I mean, Lando is doing a great
Oh
job,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
man, I'm just looking forward to how this championship battle actually finishes out. I think that's the thing that is really interesting to me at this point, and I'm glad we actually have a championship battle to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's good to see two different teams at it. It's not just, Mercedes going at head to head, like it
Yeah.
was with Nico and Lewis. So yeah, it's definitely making
Yep.
for, good and entertaining finish to the season. So definitely glad to see that.
Yeah, and I mean the cool thing about it is we're not even close to being finished. Next
hmm
race is the 26th, the Russian GP. I'm not the biggest fan of that track. It is flat
hmm
like a pancake, um, but it is what it is.
yeah.
And then we've got the Turkish Grand Prix, which
Yes.
we all remember from last year, from being some rain and some
Yes.
weather, and
Yes.
and that and it produced a great race in
Did.
Turkey.
It did. Yeah.
And then to round out October. before we head to the final races in November and early December is the USGP,
Mhm.
which Rob, our good friend of the show, um, him and I will be in attendance to that one. So we hope to have a very good report on that one. But
Yeah.
well, man, Stephen, is there anything else that kind of crossed your path
Um,
this week that you want to bring up?
yeah. The only thing would be Netflix just released their documentary on Schumacher,
Yeah,
with Michael Schumacher. I'm only about a quarter of the way through it, but definitely very interesting so far. I mean, like it is kind of that typical documentary where it kind of gives you the history and here's how Michael was raised and here's his
right.
first few years. But it's really cool seeing that and seeing the type of person that he is, kind of more behind the scenes and stuff. So definitely recommend. I mean, at the end of the day, he's one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. So definitely worth the while to, if you have a couple hours, check it out for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely on my list to watch. I did see Mick post about it.
Mm,
I guess it came out today in the states.
yes.
So I did see Mick post about it. So that is something definitely I will watch because I do remember most of Michael's career, and it was phenomenal to watch him in action. So would love some more behind the scenes on that, and I think that that film was very very pushed by the family as well. So it should be
Correct.
interesting.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Well, all right, man.
Okay.
Well, that's episode two. I think
Yeah.
in the books here, and Steven, if you don't have anything else, we'll put a bow tie on this one,
Yeah.
and we don't know when the next one will be. We'll probably try to plan it out for after. We'll probably do it after Russia because there's a 2 week layoff between Russia and
Yeah.
Turkey. So
Yeah.
for our listeners, pay attention and just keep watching the channels. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts on what's going on and what you would like to hear us cover in regards to Formula One. So for Stephen Harris, I am Patrick Finley, and as we said last time, keep the wheels pointed in the right direction. Thanks, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you. See you guys.